Hi, and welcome to Slick Willy Flying. Today we're gonna do this. So what I've done here, these are for freshwater. I've made a few. Here's a black one to show you relative to my pink. I also made a fluorescent orange. I love these little flies, and what they are is they are basically, it's the best way to show you. It's a baitfish, but instead of being that flat profile baitfish that we all seem to make when we use EP fibers, this is more of a full body rounded EP baitfish. And I mean, maybe you want to call this a worm. You can think of this however you want. For me, it's a little baitfish. And I love this profile. It's not flat. It gives it a little bit more bulk, a little bit more vibration. It pushes a little bit more water. But being EP, it's awesome because it wicks off the water quickly. It casts really great. And it just works exactly what I want. It keeps that shape in the water. These things are awesome. I use these that I'm showing you on trout. Now, what I'm going to tie today is I'm going to tie one, same kind of mentality, a little bit bigger, and I'm going to tie it for the surf, inshore saltwater. So what I'm going to do is these are tied on a size 4 streamer hook. It's just a long freshwater streamer hook. I'm going to go for a 34007 size 2 hook, a little bit bigger hook. So I realized that I use the Mustad 34007 a lot, and I use the B10S Stinger a lot. Another hook that I like is the SC15, but I'm going to explain to you right now why I'm going for the 34007. Here I have in my left the SC15 from Gamakatsu, and in the right I have the Mustad 34007. If you look at the hook part of these two hooks, they're almost identical. They're both wide gap hooks, strong wire, great hooks. But the shank length is very different on these two hooks. I have much more shank on the Mustad hook than I do on the SC15. And that's the reason that I'm using the Mustad hook for this fly. It gives me more space to build that tube body. So for materials, I'm going to use Sculpting flash fiber in white. I want to make a white one. And I love this Sculpting flash fiber. It has a little bit of built-in flash. And I just think it looks great. So we're going to use that. Any EP type fiber works. So you can use whatever you have. I'm not using any additional flash. Basically, it's just the fiber. Now, instead of using a bead like I did here, or instead of using kind of dumbbell eyes, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the shank with lead. Because I want the saltwater version that I'm about to make, I want it to hover. I don't want it to jig. So I want to be able to cast this in the trough, in the surf, and I want it to kind of sink flat. It's my ultimate goal. So instead of putting all my weight at the front of the hook, I'm going to wrap the shank with lead. Then the only other material I'm using is the Sculpting flash fiber. I will prep a spool of white thread, Uni 220, for the tying of the fly. And then I'm going to have a little bit of red. I got a spool of red that I can get it ready, because I'm going to put I'll put a little bit of red on the end, on the nose, if you will, and then I'll lock it all in with a tiny bit of UV resin. And then I'm probably going to put some red eyes on this one. I didn't put any eyes on these others. They get a lot of bites. There's 6 on one, half a dozen on the other. But I like putting eyes on my saltwater flies. So yeah, so let's do it. So I hope you're enjoying the cocktail. Of course, I'm having my Cuba Libre. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe. And I say we change the camera angle and let's tie this fly. Okay, let's go ahead and pop that out. We're going to pop in the Mustad hook that we talked about. And the first thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of lead thread on and then my super glue. It's a little too messy to do it in reverse order. So you can use lead thread, you can use, there's different ways to make your flies want to sink. Here I've got a little bit of flat lead. It's just a piece of flat lead. There's no other way to explain it. And all I'm going to do is basically touching turns up the hook shank, and I'm just trying to give this a little bit of ballast. I don't want it to jig. I want it to basically suspend and swim like a fish, not bouncing up and down like a jig. So once I'm happy with that, and I am, now I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of super glue on the hook. And while this glue is a little bit still wet, I'm going to go ahead and start my thread. I like starting my thread in that wet glue. So we're just going to put a nice little base, nothing too crazy. And while that dries up, I'm going to get my first clump of fibers. I really like tying with this Sculpting flash fiber. This stuff is great. And like I was saying, I don't get a lot. I get strands that look about that thick. Now the tail, which is the first part we're going to do, I'm actually going to make the tail much thicker than any other portion of this fly, because it's going to get trimmed down and you want to have enough material to be able to trim it down. And this will establish the overall length of the fly. So for me, it has to be at least 1.5, if not 2 hook shanks is my tail. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a clump. Remember, this is all going to get trimmed. You can even trim the length. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in another clump. Almost in the exact same tie-in point. I have found over the years that if I don't make this tail really fluffy, that it looks too thin when I do my trim work. So I'm going to do it in 3 clumps, which should pretty much give me everything I'm looking for. That's going to give me a nice flat fluffy tail. Okay, so I used up that entire clump, believe it or not, so I'm going to get another one, same size. Now I'm going to start making the fly. So the way that this fly looks good, it's by packing it in. You just have to pack in fibers. So a couple of wraps so it doesn't build up too much bulk. Come in and snip that off right at the tie-in. Now if you really wanted to take a little bit of time and make this fly super durable, you could put a little drop of glue on each one of those wraps, and this fly will be bulletproof if you decide to do that. I don't really do that. So now I'm going to do the same on the bottom. And all I'm really doing now is I'm looking at the fly and I'm filling in the gaps. A couple of tight wraps right in that same spot, and trim it off. You notice that I'm not putting a ton of material. I'm putting on basically that amount, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. But I am filling in all the gaps around the hook. And that's the process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward so that this video comes out good and doesn't take all night. And we'll fast forward to the trimming portion of this fly. Okay, so now it's a whip finish. And now I'm going to go ahead and start the red thread that I had already ready, because I want to make this front end red. Just going to check that. That looks really good. So whip finish. That worked out pretty good. I am going to use a little bit of UV resin, so I'm not really worried about making more than one knot. Okay, so now the trimming. This is the magic part. So the first thing I want to do is just fluff out everything all the way around. And this is it's impossible for me to trim this in the vise. So I'm going to do my best to keep my hands in the screen. But all we're going to do, and I'm hoping I'm in the screen, I'm in the frame, I'm sorry. All we're going to do is we want to make that same torpedo shape that I've been doing, like this one, just a little bit bigger. So the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to come in with my long scissors, and for me long scissors are important, and I'm just going to roughly start working around the really rough edges. Something like that. So now I'm starting to get what starting to look like a bait fish. Now I want my hook exposed. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here right under the hook, and then I'm going to go on either side of the hook, and I'm going to start taking off those edges. And you see that the shape starts taking form. It's really not hard to do. You just should definitely take your time, because once you cut it, there's no putting it back. And you can see that the tail, like I said, if you don't have enough tail, it doesn't really look good. And I'm starting to think that I didn't put enough tail in this one. Should have put a few more pieces in the tail. What's going to end up happening is that that's going to make this fly be a little bit shorter than what I was hoping it was going to end up being, just so that I can make the tail look a little bit more like a tail. But we're starting to get the shape. Okay, so we're back. So, I mean, I think you get the general idea. I could trim this for a lot longer. I'm going to go ahead and do the UV resin on the red head like we spoke. Doesn't take a lot of resin. A little bit of resin goes a long way. And I have a needle that I use just for resin. That I like to, if I have to move anything around or fix anything, this is the resin needle. And my resin scissors. And it's not that it's not a bad needle or it's not a bad pair of scissors. It's just I like to spare my really good stuff from the resin. And that looks good. We're going to hit it with the lamp. And now that knot is basically bulletproof. So now the last thing you could do, you have a couple options. This kind of sculpting flash fiber, EP fibers, all these kind of fibers, they accept like a Sharpie, for example. They accept it really, really well. So if you wanted to put some dots, put some barring, make this look a little bit different, you can absolutely do that. Another option, the option that I'm going to do on this fly, so I'm going to go ahead and put on, with a little bit of super glue, I'm going to put on some 5mm red eyes. And that's the only thing I'm going to do to this fly. I'm not going to put any form of marking. Now, you can easily use yellow eyes also. I just like the way the red eyes stand out with this particular fly. So I'm going to get my eye ready. And these are small. These always give me a little bit of a hard time, but hopefully it's going to go good. Now I want to put 1 drop of super glue near the front. This is now gel super glue. I'm using the hook shank as a guide, and I want the eye to be near that red knot. And this will help me to hopefully situate both of these eyes in the same spot. And my goal is to keep my fingers out of the super glue at all costs. I want to do this, I want to position it just using my tools. I feel like every time I use my fingers, I just make a mess. And that came out pretty good. I like where that came out. So now we can flip this guy over and do the opposite side. Same exact process. I find also that when I use bigger eyes, when I tie bigger flies, that those are generally easier to work with. These small eyes just give me nightmares. And then I watch other people do it and it looks so easy. It's never easy for me. I promise. Although that one came out way easier than the first one. Now I'm just going to make sure that I like them. Oh, that came out beautiful. Rarely can I say that my eyes come out that nice. I'm real happy with that. So yeah, so that's the fly. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're having a cocktail with me. Of course, I'm having my Don Q Cuba Libre. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe. Good luck catching, and we will see you on the next video.